Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today I have a kind of TBR video for you, and that is because I decided that this year I wanted to try and do or join the r/fantasy bingo challenge, which as far as I have gathered has now been going on for a few years already. It's a yearly challenge, always going from the 1st of April to the 31st of March in the next year, and basically you have a bingo board, and for each like tile thing you get a challenge. You pick a book for each tile and you see how many bingos you get. It's pretty straightforward really. The first time I heard of it was last year when Lena from Sufficiently Advanced Lena also did a TBR video for the 2021 challenge. I am personally not really on Reddit, especially not on the fantasy subreddit, because yeah, it's just like a lot of the subreddits don't really have a community that I feel comfortable with. But this challenge still seems really fun, so I decided I wanted to try and do it anyway. And so that is what this video is. Basically, it's gonna be me going through the challenges and then telling you which book I will try to read for each challenge. And my battery is blinking, so let me quickly see if my backup battery is, you know, not loaded, but has energy, if my battery has battery. And yeah, see you in a second. So I am back. It's now quite a bit later because my backup battery of course was dead, so yeah, why wouldn't it be? But I think I said everything I wanted to say for the intro. Now I'm just gonna very quickly read you the rules, or the rules that I applied to choosing my TBR, because there's also some, you know, community additions that I'm just gonna ignore because yeah, I'm not interested in doing the community stuff. I'm just doing this as a private challenge. So first of all, the period, of course, as I said, 1st of April until 31st of March. And of course, 1st of April was a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, but I'm just gonna, you know, count books from now onwards. I did not really put any books on the bingo board that I have already read in April. Then next is you can't use the same book more than once on the card. 1 square is 1 book. Got that. You may not repeat an author on the card, except you may reuse an author from the short story square. I do have one exception there, but I'll get to that once I'll get through my TBR. Next, rereads. You can only use 1 square for a reread. All other books must be first time reads. Also have that. Substitution, you may substitute 1 square from the 2022 card with a square from a previous bingo card. Did not do that, was too lazy to look up the older cards, to be honest, like the older prompts. And then there's a hard mode for those of you who would like even more of a challenge for any of the squares. Basically, you have 2 possible prompts for each square. One is like the easy mode, and the other one has kind of an addition to that easy mode. But I think it'll be quite clear once I go through the prompts what that is about. I did not choose books for hard mode for every single prompt, but I do have quite a few bingos that I can do with hard mode on my board. And now I'm going to, as quickly as possible for me, go through the prompts and through the books that I chose for each prompt. I am gonna try to tell you at least the genre or subgenre of each book, which some of them are science fiction, because even though this is on r/fantasy, it is a challenge that is just generally SFF related. But yeah, I'm gonna tell you the subgenres. I'm not gonna tell you detailed summaries for any of these books because yeah, we'd be here for a long time because it's 25 books. And then one last thing before I go through the prompts, there was one criteria or a few criteria that I set myself when choosing this TBR. The first was that if at all possible, I only wanted to have authors that are women or from marginalized communities on this TBR, on this board. I do have one exception where it's an author where I'm not sure if they might be queer or not. They are a white man, so generally not something I would consider a marginalized community within the fantasy genre. However, the book itself does have an LGBT main character, and the book also has like 600 ratings on Goodreads. So I was like, okay, I can make one exception out of 25. The second criteria I set myself is that I wanted at least half of the square to be filled with authors of color, so authors who are not white. I easily managed to do that. And then also I wanted over half of the square to be books with queer main characters, or that deal with queerness or have queer authors. So books that I would call queer, basically. And I also easily managed that. So yeah, that was the 3 criteria that I had for filling my bingo board. So now let's go through the prompts. The first prompt is actually a prompt that I have an issue with, but that is a book from r/fantasy's top LGBTQIA list. Any book on this list, including sequels, hard mode, a book or series that received 10 votes or less. And I actually think this is quite an old list because, like, for example, none of the Sapphic Trifecta were on this list. And also, I don't understand why the choices would be limited to this list that maybe has like 20 books on it, 30 books on it, when there have been so many amazing LGBTQIA fantasies coming out in the past few years, and also coming out this year. And also there were other prompts that dealt with representation where it was just like, you know, choose a book with this representation. And the hard mode was then, it can't be a book from the list of recommendations that we provide you. So yeah, it was just, I did not like this prompt. I ended up choosing one from the list anyway, because there were at least a few books that I hadn't read yet. And so I ended up choosing An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon, who first of all is a queer author. Also, I believe the main character, if I remember correctly, is queer and also neurodivergent. So yeah, I've been meaning to read this for a while. I think it's Afrofuturism, if I'm not completely wrong. And yeah, it also covers hard mode because this had 8 votes, if I remember correctly, but definitely under 10 votes on the list. The next prompt, since I've now already spent so much time on the first prompt, was Weird Ecology, story that takes place in a world that is wildly different from our own and includes such things as unique environments, strange flora and fauna, unusual ecosystems, etc. And hard mode, not written by Jeff Vandermeer or China Miebel. And yeah, I had a lot of troubles with this prompt. I generally tend to have a lot of troubles, like in TBR challenges, with prompts that are content oriented, because I'm usually like, I haven't read the book yet. How am I supposed to know if, you know, weird flora and fauna is in this book, if, you know, what's in this book classifies as that? But the book that I ended up choosing, because it's, you know, kind of sold as environmental fantasy, so I think, you know, you at least have this focus on flora and fauna, was The Forever Sea by Joshua Philip Johnson. This is the one book where I'm not sure if the author is queer or not. He is a white man, or, you know, physically presents as a white man, has he, him pronouns. However, the main character is bisexual, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I at least have representation covered in the contents of the book. And the reason why I chose it for this prompt specifically is because the setting is this kind of magical prairie type thing, strange tall grass where no one knows what's underneath it, and there's just ships flying over it. And I don't know, it just sounds really fun, and I think it's gonna fit the prompt. Next prompt is pretty straightforward. 2 or more authors, any book written by 2 or more authors. Anthologies count. Hard mode would be 3 or more authors. Not going for hard mode on this one. Obviously the last one was hard mode as well, because it wasn't Jeff Vandermeer or China Miebel. But for this one, I'm going to choose a book that has not had its title announced yet, and that is the 3rd book in the Rook and Rose series by M.A. Carrick. And M.A. Carrick is an author duo made up of Marie Brennan and Alec Helms. So 2 authors there. And genre-wise, this is just straight up adult high fantasy with queer-friendly world building, queer characters, and just an amazing story. So prompt number 4 is historical SFF, any book within the historical fantasy subgenre, and hard mode, which I covered this time again, is not based in Britain or Ireland. And for this one I have A Bond Undone by JENN, which is the second book in the Condor Heroes series. JENN is a Chinese author. The series was originally published in the 50s and has now been recently retranslated into English as well as German. And this is set, I believe, in 13th century China, if I remember correctly. Olden Times in China covers it as well, I would say, and this is classified as, I'm probably gonna mispronounce it now, wuxia in, you know, Chinese literature and story traditions, so martial arts focused stories. So yes, very excited to continue on with this series. Prompt number 5 is Set in Space, a book that takes place primarily at least 50% off planet, and hard mode is characters are not originally from Earth, and it is acceptable for the characters to be descendants of Earthlings as long as they are not themselves from Earth. So for this one I have Ancillary Justice by... I forgot the author, by Anne Leckie, and I do believe that this also covers hard mode, because what I have gathered from the summary is that our main character is like a ship, a spaceship, the intelligence AI of a spaceship caught in a human body or something. So I think this should cover hard mode. That's it for the first row, and I need to speed it up for the rest of the rows because this way we're gonna be here 40 minutes. Second row across, first square, standalone, a book that is not part of a series or larger world, no connected novellas or short stories, hard mode, not on r/fantasy's favorite standalones list. That is what I meant. They could have just done this with LGBTQIA as well. But anyway, for this one I chose Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, which is a retelling of the Ramayana, which is one of the big Indian epics. This is a standalone and it's one of my most anticipated reads of the year, so very excited for this one. Second one is Anti-Hero. Wikipedia describes an anti-hero as a character in a story who lacks conventional heroic qualities and attributes such as idealism, courage and morality. Although anti-heroes may sometimes perform actions that are morally correct, it is not always for the right reasons, often acting primarily out of self-interest or in ways that defy conventional ethical codes. And hard mode is a YA book with an anti-hero, and for this one I chose Iron Widow by... I am so bad with the author names. I need to look them up because I only wrote down the titles, so I don't have the author names ready. So Iron Widow is by Shiran Che Zhao. I hope I pronounced that correctly once again. Obviously, since I didn't prepare the author names, I also didn't prepare the pronunciations. But yeah, the main character, I believe, has been described as quite anti-hero, although I've also been told that she does go into straight up villainy as well. But you know, it's fine. We don't have to take it this seriously. So second row is a book club or read along. The book club or read along here like means book clubs or read-alongs on r/fantasy. However, I decided to just choose a book from, you know, my book club because I went through the books, okay, on the book clubs read-alongs things on r/fantasy, and pretty much all of them I've either already read or I just have zero interest in. And I just, you know, it is in a way a challenge to, you know, go outside of your comfort zone maybe, but I'm already doing that with the science fiction on here, and there's a difference between going outside of your comfort zone and picking up books that you have absolutely no interest in simply to cover a prompt. So I decided to go with City of Dusk by Tara Sim, which is the book club pick for my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries for May. And that book club is about reading adult high fantasy written by women and genderqueer people. So if you're interested in joining, all the links as always are down below. Sorry if the frame is different, my battery died again. But because I wasn't able to fully load it because it's quite late already, so I didn't want to, you know, wait hours. But anyway, next one is Cool Weapon. At least one main character uses a weapon with magical properties. Hard mode, weapon has a unique name. Examples: Excalibur from Arthurian legends, Dragnipur from Malison, Sting in Lord of the Rings, etc. This, once again, is one of those prompts where I'm like, well, if I haven't read the book, how am I supposed to know if it has a cool magical weapon? Luckily, I'm currently reading a series where I know the main character uses a cool magical weapon every now and again. And so I chose The Discord of Gods by JENN, LYONS, which is the last book in the A Chorus of Dragons series. Also currently read along going on. Once again, gotta plug it if you're still interested in joining in to catch up in time, maybe no longer in time because the release is a week from now. But you know, if you want to join us for the read along, the Discord is the book club Discord, so a link down below. But yeah, the main character every now and again uses a cool sword that doesn't just have one name, it has two names. It's called, actually it has three names. I think it's also called Godslayer, The Ruin of Kings, and Urthaniel. Urthandriel? A hard to pronounce name. And it's a really cool, actually not magical weapon, because it's like the anti-matter to magic. It just sucks up all magic and you can't use magic on it. And it can, as the first name suggests, be used to slay gods. So it's a really cool weapon. I'm happy with this choice. And The Chorus of Dragons is just straight up queer adult high fantasy. Last square in the second row, Revolutions and Rebellions, a book featuring a revolution. Any overthrowing of governments, monarchs and systems will do. Hard mode, Revolution, Rebellion is the main focus of the plot. Which confuses me because if there's a revolution or rebellion, isn't that usually the main focus? But anyway, I chose The Oleander Sword, which is the second book in the Burning Kingdoms. I think it's the Burning Kingdoms because the other one is the Burnt Empire. Yes, the Burning Kingdom series by TASHA SURI. The first one was the Jasmine Throne, which came out last year, and it was one of the Sapphic trifecta, so it's Sapphic adult high fantasy. And yeah, there is very much a rebellion going on because on the one hand you have this oppressed people, and on the other hand one of the main characters is the overthrown sister of the king emperor, and she's trying to get her throne back. Third row across, name in the title. A character's first or last name appears in the title. Hard mode, the title has the character's first and last name. I don't know if this one counts for hard mode, but what I chose is Moon Darksmile by Tessa Gretchen, which is the sequel to Nightshine. And although it doesn't sound like it, Moon Darksmile is actually the name of who the main character is going to be. They were, I don't remember what pronouns they used, so I'm just gonna say they were one of the main characters in the first book. I don't even remember if Moon Darksmile was their full name. But yeah, so very excited for this book as well. Next one, author uses initials. Read a book by an author who goes by their initials, like N.K. Jemisin, or uses initials somewhere in the name by George R. Martin. Hard mode, which I don't have here, is initials are a pseudonym and not from the author's actual name. The book I chose is Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I do believe R.F. Kuang uses her, you know, proper initials. And this one is magical decolonial dark academia, I believe. It's very academic and I'm very excited for this book. Square number 3 in row number 3, published in 2022, a book published for the first time in 2022, no reprints or new editions. And hard mode is that it's also a debut novel. For this one I did cover hard mode once again, I believe, and I chose The Stardust Thief by, I forgot the author again. You can tell which are books by authors that I have read previously and which aren't. It's by Chelsea Abdullah, and if I remember correctly, this is adult high fantasy, Arabian adult high fantasy inspired by stories from 1001 Nights. But I could be wrong on that because I have a lot of anticipated releases and sometimes I get them mixed up. Then I have urban fantasy, a subgenre of fantasy in which the narrative uses supernatural elements in a 19th century to 21st century urban society, often overlaps with other subgenres like paranormal romance and superhero stories. Hard mode, the book has an LGBTQ plus POV character. I did cover hard mode once again. I have Siren Queen by Nhi Vo. This is set in the early golden Hollywood era, I think, pre-code era, and it is queer. Once again, all of Nhi Vo's stories are. And I wasn't sure at first if I should count it as urban fantasy, because urban fantasy for me is very modern. This is set in the early 20th century, but it did say 19th to 21st century, so yeah. And I do think Hollywood counts as an urban setting. Last one for the third row, set in Africa. Book must either be set in Africa like Rosewater by Tate Thompson or in an analogous setting that is based on a real-world African setting like Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. Hard mode is author is of African heritage. I did not cover hard mode here, however I did choose an author who is not from the global north, and I chose Black Leopard Red Wolf by... did not look the author up again. So the author is Marlon James. This is adult high fantasy inspired by African landscapes, African cultures, as far as I believe, and the author is from Jamaica. And we're moving on to the fourth row. Here we have non-human protagonist. Main character must not be human or partially human. Humanoid aliens or anthropomorphic animals do count. And hard mode is non-humanoid protagonist. I do not have hard mode here, but I chose The Thousand Eyes by A.K. Larkwood. I did actually read the first book, so that's why I did not have to actually look up the author. But The Thousand Eyes by A.K. Larkwood, which is the second book in the Serpent Gate series, the sequel to The Unspoken Name, and our main character is an orc. So non-human. I believe actually no one in this world is human, and that's quite neat, and also it is sapphic. Next one is Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey, any book that deals with time not behaving as it should, time travel, time slips, time loops, time stopping, multiple timelines, etc. all work in the square. Hard mode, no time travel. The book involves something off about time that's not necessarily time travel. So for this one, I have my one exception where I did choose an author twice, but that's also because this is the one reread that I have on my bingo board, so I thought, you know, it's whatever. And I chose The House of Always by JENN LYONS, which is the fourth book in the Chorus of Dragons series. The last book I still have to reread before the new book comes out. And the reason why I chose this is because there's quite a lot of weird time stuff going on. I'm not gonna say too much because otherwise that would be spoilers in case you have read the first book. But since the first book, you know, there was always play with timelines in terms of storytelling, in the way that the story is not necessarily told chronologically. And so yeah, but there's also there's some other time stuff going on with this book specifically, so that's why I chose it. Prompt number 3 in the fourth row is 5 SFF short stories, any short story as long as there are 5 of them. Hard mode is read an entire SFF anthology or collection, which I intend to do. And for this one I chose the year's best African speculative fiction 2021, which is a collection of short stories from 2020 by African speculative fiction authors. And I first of all saw this cover and had to get it. I don't usually love short stories that much, but I think I might discover some authors in here that I might want to read more from in the future. Next, I have features mental health. Story takes a strong interest in or explores themes like mental wellness and illness, self-care, and so on. The hard mode is not the Stormlit Archive or any of the books in the linked list. Once again, I have that covered. I chose an anticipated release of mine, The Final Strife by Sara El Arifi. And this one is an African Arabian story, and one of the main characters suffers from addiction, or, you know, fights with addiction. and so I chose that as the mental health focus because in my opinion addiction also is part of mental health, or well, you know, dealing with addiction is part of mental health. So I thought this fit quite well here. Last one for the fourth row is self-published or indie publisher. Self-published or published through a small indie publisher. If the novel has been picked up by a publisher, as long as you read it when it was self-pubbed, it still counts. Hard mode is the self-published has fewer than 100 ratings on Goodreads, or an indie publisher that has done an AMA with r/fantasy. And I decided to go with a book that has in the past few years gotten quite a bit of hype in the romance, fantasy romance, or on the romance fantasy romance side of BookTube. And so I decided to go with Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton and to see what all the fuss is about. So now on to the last row. We should be done soon. So first square is award finalist but not won. Any book that was shortlisted for an award or multiple awards but never received an award. And hard mode is neither Hugo nominated nor Nebula nominated, and I do believe I have the hard mode for this one. I forgot which award it was that it was, you know, not winning for, nominated for, but I chose Green Rider by, I forgot the author. I'm too lazy to look it up. Like, Green Rider is a fantasy classic, so I think you know what book I am talking about, and this was nominated for one award that it didn't win, so I went with this one. Second square is BIPOC author. An author must be Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. Hard mode is a book written by an Indigenous author. For this one, I once again have covered the hard mode. I have Fevered Star by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is the second book in the Between Earth and Sky series, the sequel to Black Sun, and Rebecca Roanhorse is a Black Indigenous author. So yeah, have this one covered as well. And even though the titles might lead you to believe otherwise, this is in fact fantasy and not science fiction. It's adult fantasy inspired by pre-Columbian indigenous, not communities, cultures and societies. So yeah, very excited for the sequel. I already have it pre-ordered and I don't do that a lot. Then I have shapeshifters. At least one character has the ability to change their physical form. Hard mode is the most prominent shifter is not a wolf dog shifter. For instance, werewolves can exist but can't be the most notable shifter characters, main characters. So for this one I have Crowbones by Anne Bishop. I'm actually not sure if I cover hard mode with this one. So this is the newest book that has come out in the other series. If this was part of the main series, I wouldn't cover hard mode because there the main shifter is a wolf shifter. However, I know that this is the sequel to one of the kind of spin-off books, and I don't actually remember what the main shifters were in that book. But I know that at the center of this story, I don't think it's gonna be the crow shifters that are at the center of the story. I think it's another supernatural entity. Anyway, there's a lot of shifters in this world, so I have at least that prompt covered. Second to last prompt, no ifs, ands, and buts. Title does not include the following words: the, a, an, and, or, if, of, but. Hard mode title is 3 words or more. I do have the hard mode covered for that. I have Not Good for Maidens. 4 was not on the list, so I am in the clear there. I forgot the author once again. I am too lazy to look up the authors by now. You have the covers here as well. And this one is a retelling as well of, I forgot what it's about. It's like a retelling of a ballad, of a British ballad, I believe. I am tired because I have been filming quite a while. Can you notice? So the last one is Family Matters, a book that features biological family ties, sisters, brothers, mothers, fathers, grandparents, and children, as long as the relationship plays a part. It's welcome for this square. Hard mode features at least 3 generations in a single family. For this one I chose Blackwater Sister by, I forgot again, whatever. And this one I believe has to do with a daughter finding out family secrets or something. it says something about the grandmother in the synopsis on the back of the book, so I believe it should probably count. And that was it for all 25 prompts and all 25 books. And I guess I'll check back in a year and tell you if I, you know, got any bingos, read all books, read no books, who knows. So if you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. I hope it didn't get too long. If you had to choose a book for any of the prompts, leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Also, if you read any of the books, tell me what your thoughts were on them. Well, without spoilers, obviously. If you want to buddy read any of the books, also tell me in the comments. I'm always up for a buddy read. All the links to my social media as well as to the book club that I mentioned are in the description box, so go and check them out. And I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!